Hello, everybody.
Hello.
That should solve it a little bit. Apparently it didn't want to cooperate with me because voice mod has been acting up, and it was set to the voice mod mic, so I have set it to the correct microphone. Hello everyone, we are back. It's been a while. Kept you waiting, huh? Yada yada. All the references to time. I am Trisky. I run the channel. I am the GM for this campaign. Joining me are three of our local chucklefucks, the ones that happen to still be in this room, oddly enough. It would be Magnifical playing Chase Long. Say hello.
Hello.
Scourge playing Reginald, otherwise known as Fester, to only himself right now.
Hello.
And Unknown, or Ken, as I call him, otherwise playing Zephyr, the Harpy Monk.
Hi, everyone.
And with that in mind, we left off last time where the party sort of realized that the sundials downstairs that they have been manipulating with these very fancy ever-lighting torches that they found can be set to times other than the generic noon, 4, and 8 p.m. that represented respectively past, present, and future, at least for the sake of keeping it simple. And by setting it to 2 and interceding in the events of the raid in its spectral form, they managed to save the life of a young woman. But for today, you got more exploring of the limitations of your, or dicking around, whichever you prefer.
Yeah, trying to finally solve this conundrum.
Aye. So, any thoughts from y'all on the previous session? What you might be thinking about?
How?
Well, now that we have somebody who is alive, we can finally figure out what the problem is. Well,
She took off, though, didn't she?
Yep, she leapt through the window into the moat below.
Granted, if this is really some events through time, she would be out somewhere in the real-time world. That's something to know once we get out there.
Mayhaps.
Or, well, a theory, anyhow.
A game theory. A game theory. God damn it. Keep forgetting that the push to talk doesn't work if I have OBS activated as my main window as I'm talking. It just doesn't work that way. But yeah, you've all managed to save a strange noblewoman of sorts, highlighted in orange here. I sadly have, funnily enough, lost the files for the maps, so I couldn't update the map to not have her corpse there, so you'll have to theater of the mind that for the remainder of the game. I apologize. Apparently my dumbass just had the folder sitting in my downloads, which I delete every now and then.
The gruesome sight was just so much for us that we can't help but not still see it.
Yeah. It lingers in your mind palace. That's a good cop-out.
it will forever haunt my nightmares.
Just saying it in the most happy tone. It will forever haunt my nightmares. Yay! But yeah, you've been in this little area. You've been trying to think of what to do next after that. Any of you have any ideas, or are we gonna sit here as I awkwardly watch no microphones move for the remainder of the session? You don't have your normal 2 party members who tend to do most of the talking, so this is going to be interesting.
How?
Zephyr,
Yes?
you're quite physically capable, correct?
Stretches, yes.
Good. I've been thinking on how to perhaps secure the front door so that the invaders do not get in next time that we fiddle around. And if memory serves, I believe there are chains and such in the holding area on this floor.
There's chains, and a lot of metal, depending how far you want to go into deconstructing the place.
Yes, yes. I believe that chains will do for now. But yes, perhaps if we gather a lot of chain and fix it around the sort of handles on the inside, then that should prevent them getting in. That is a theory.
Game theory.
Yes. It could even doesn't stop them outright. It could buy those inside enough time, much like the woman who used to be here.
Yes, yes.
Although, while I am capable, I'm not exactly stretches out wing, flexes her talons. Dexterous, I think it's called.
Yes, yes. Having a lack of opposable thumbs tends to hamper matters.
Oh, hang on. I could try making multiple arms for you if you need a hand or two, or three, or four, or cinq.
Yes, yes, yes.
All right. I could fly them down, bring them to the door, and you can wrap.
I just imagine friggin' like Chase doing that. Reproduce by budding. Can ya? Can ya? Can ya? It's fucking SpongeBob little thing. Nobody remember that episode? I'm
I
alone.
do
Okay.
remember that one.
I think, yeah, it's coming back to me. Core memory unlocked.
I'm just like imagining all these arms sprouting out of her head, and every single one of them has a mouth that says "Hi, hi," and just a progressively higher pitch. Anywho,
I'm actually just getting weird YouTube poop flashbacks. Every last inch of me's covered in Gaston rips open his shirt. It's just a bunch of his face on his chest.
God damn it. YouTube poops are an art form, and nobody can tell me otherwise. But anywho, so basically the gist of what you were talking about was utilizing chains or something of the sort from, I'm assuming, the room nearby that you found with all the cages in such a capacity to block the doors, at least for a time.
Yeah.
All right. Oh yeah, the game defaults to pause. There you go. Now you're free to move.
To the dungeon.
By the way, in case you don't remember, you can just use WASD.
Huh.
So you enter this room. It is a caged room, or rather, a room with very strong steel bars on the front door and bars amongst all the other doors. You previously came here. A good number of the cages have been opened, and the ones that remain didn't have occupants in the first place. You come inside and try to look about. As you do, you don't really notice any particular chain, but you do notice that some of the latches have small bits of chain and such that you could potentially repurpose if you could repair it significantly enough. What do you do?
Yoink.
Try and cut off the chains from the doors and whatnot.
Yeah, if there's like any like solid lock or joint area, I try to with a dramatic swipe of the claw, like crack through it.
All right, just give me a quick attack with your claws. See how it does. It's not too hard, but we'll see.
I can try doing the same thing with my longsword. Or
Yeah.
greatsword, yeah.
You could just roll the attack that you would normally do, Ken.
I thought I did. Oh, I just posted the ability. One second.
Yep. Like in due time, you'll be able to do this, but wondering if how well you do it is more so the point of it. All right, yeah. With your talons, you manage to very eloquently strike one of the locks and chains from one of the few remaining doors that haven't been unlocked. Is where you started first. So, if anything, your first target would be as such because they are in the best condition. One of the ones up top. And as you do, you manage to cut it off with very limited damage to the remaining chains and find yourself in possession of a chain and lock. You don't have the keys or anything of the sort, and you would need to figure out some way to fashion it onto another door because obviously this one was intended for it, but you have something you can work with. However,
I was thinking we'd if I read Reginald right, we were thinking of if the door has like any latches or handles, we'd almost just kind of like wrap them around that in enough of a coil that and get to hold there or something.
yeah, you're basically just intending to bar the doors for long enough to give people a warning.
Mm-hmm. And with that, she'll kind of slide that off to the side and just keep going until she's told to stop. Gives a little hoot. She seems to be having a pretty good time.
A couple of the ones that have already been broken open, you don't see any use or any surviving chains from what was broken off because they were mangled in the process. But you are able to get another decent one off of the one on the far right. So in your inventory, just go ahead and, well, not your inventory probably because you can't carry it unless they toss it in your bag, but just toss two locks and chains. Just add a custom item and do that. To quantity lock and chain. So I'm assuming Scourge could probably take track of that for me.
Does he?
It'd just be a miscellaneous. Yeah, he's on it. With that in mind, do you start making your way downstairs?
Anyone else
Sure.
see anything useful?
Are there any other chains to break, or is that all good?
That's about as what you're able to do, really. Everything else, you would have to have better skills and actual blacksmithing and whatnot in order to properly affix them back together again and get anything usable. Which I don't believe any of you have blacksmithing, correct me if I'm wrong?
No.
Or at least don't have a blacksmithing kit or anything, not that you don't have, a blacksmith across the hall, but you wouldn't know how to use the tools per se, so it would do you a little good. So accordingly, some time is spent getting these, and then proceeding back down to the ground floor. You are all there. All right, cool. You return downstairs, back into the main foyer, and as you proceed back in, the normal scene of what you've remembered from the present lays before you. However, even though you have left the 2 torches in position for setting it to 2 p.m. as before, in order to do the in-between time, in spite of that, after the whole entire apparition has lapsed, it has now forced itself back into the 4 p.m. position, and the 2 torches have been knocked aside.
Okay.
Time to set it back, I suppose.
So do you do as such?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to skip over the part where I make sure that you're doing it in tandem, because you already seem to know that doing it like at separate times and not syncing it up causes psychic damage. So you proceed to set up one of you and on one side and one of you on the other with the torches. Probably not Zephyr, because Zephyr can't hold the torches. And then proceed to set them in position to set the clocks to 2. Well, you don't know AM or PM. It doesn't really matter, though. As you do, you stand still, and as it did the last time, for a moment, nothing happens. How long around do you remain, or do you instantly get to work?
Oh, I don't think we have anything. If we don't have anything to wait for, let's just start trying to build our barricade.
Indeed, yeah.
Well, you see the scene in ghastly form of all the noble men, women, and servants walking about. Assuming you... How it seems like you guys are taking this a bit nonchalantly. I want you to do a bit of a athletics check for me, Scourge, to see how quickly you're able to go about doing this, because you have a limited time.
Athletic. Well, Pathfinder doesn't have athletics.
Just a dexterity check. God damn it, the system and me remembering wrong things. It'd be acrobatics, but whatever. Right. All right, so you attempt to run over to the main doors and holding the chains, preparing to start wrapping them around. But as you get over there, you fumble with the chains and drop them once and twice in your struggle to quickly get this done. You realize it with regret that you probably should have positioned yourself a little bit earlier towards the doors, as in the midst of attempting to wind it around, the door kicks open and the chain goes flying away.
Can Zephyr try to catch the chain?
Yeah, you can try. Roll me a dex check. Or acrobatics check, actually. You manage to prevent it from flying off into oblivion, and it doesn't seem to break. But obviously you can't hold it in your hand, so you just sort of blunt its flying past and drop it to the floor. The apparitional scene that you saw before of everything bursting through and slaughtering goes on seemingly unchanged. And after a period of time while hearing the screams of death and despair around you, eventually everything calms and the 2 torches behind you set in position go magically flying off in different directions once again. Which is basically a hard reset for that part. So I gather you attempt again, and this time around we'll assume that you just position yourself ahead of time and get to it like right away, because you have limited time.
Right. We could probably get like Chase and what's his name? Kobold to
Kobold
Hrug.
friendo.
yeah,
Horug.
get them to set the torches, and then me and Zephyr can fiddle with the chains.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, so you enlist the help of Harug to be one of the folks setting up the clocks for their appropriate position. Yeah, I forgot this entire time to give you guys observer positions. Observer for Harug. Accidentally tossed him in the player party instead of friendly NPCs, but he'll be in there. So now you should be able to see his character sheet over in friendly NPCs. But you set this up. One of you is in position to, or Scourge Fester, Reginald is in position to latch these chains around the front door, and Chase and Harug do the time, and as you reset it and begin the second time, as soon as they put it into position, you begin wrapping the chain around the door and tying it as best you can, or locking it as best you can in position. And after a short moment, stepping back from the door, just in case the shrapnel can somehow hit you in the current time stream, the door proceeds to warp and cave inward, but fail to yield. And as the first hit comes, everyone in the lobby turns and looks at the door in like shock horror. After the second or third hit, they start to scramble, and the doors of the kitchen and dining hall are promptly shut as well. The raiders proceed to kick open the first set of doors and charge into the room, aggravated that it was somehow locked and cursing to each other in some strange language that you don't understand as something it is not common. And they charge towards the other doors for the dining room and look about and try and find people. They fail to find people at first, but as they approach the dining hall doors, they start knocking into them and trying to kick them open, and these ones are less held as well as they axe through it and eventually cave the doors in. But you do notice as the doors do open and some of the remaining figures who don't appear to be exactly noble remain about, the door that caves in to show that the back windows, one of them has been opened very carefully, and a few of the bodies that you do remember being in here are now missing. The remaining people who did not leap out the back door into the moat but beyond proceed to get mercilessly slaughtered before you. But they at least attempted to put up a fight against it and were taken completely by surprise. And so actually about two of the assailants go down in the fight instead of just the one corpse of these foreigners that you saw before. The battle is much more evenly fought instead of completely one-sided as before. And you do notice that the one who appeared to be some form of nobleman sitting in the throne is one of the ones that is now missing.
So does it seem to be the ones that stayed and were killed? Did it seem like they were more warriors than civilians here?
You assume them at least servants. They didn't seem to be necessarily trained guards or anything of the sort, but they were the ones that were expected to give their lives, if anything. The Lizardman is actually one of the ones that dies. And the weapons they used during the fight were very crude, like wooden boards and whatnot for shield, or like a chair held up as a shield and such kind of things. Basically bar fighting level accoutrement.
Well, it would appear that some more people got out. Good, I suppose. Though I believe with seeing how the remainder fought, I believe I know what the next piece of the puzzle is, though it may not help.
You're thinking we could leave them better weapons?
Yes. The smithy is filled with plenty of swords and whatnot, and we can at least give them a sporting chance. Though I don't believe that they are trained, but it's worth a shot.
So it seems like they'd also have the element of surprise instead of their enemies. The Raiders didn't seem like they really expected anyone to be ready for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Well, where should we set them up? Right by the door, or maybe into the dining room for them when they all retreat there?
I was gonna go with 50-50 because at the door and then at the dining hall. If the raiders keep, if the raiders break through.
I think we should also look around the rest of the keep in the meantime. See how our blocking here might have affected anything else so far.
Oh yes, definitely.
At that point around is when the torches proceed to fly off in different directions, and you have to duck your heads in hopes that they don't hit you over the head. But other than that, there seems to be silence now, and the devastation of the building seems to be as a little bit less than as seen before in the ways otherwise previously noted. The corpses that are before you now are fewer, and more of the offenders are among them. Do you want to travel around
Play first.
and reset the scene and see what happens?
Yeah.
Yeah, looking around seems like a good idea.
So you proceed to reset the torches again and then begin to look around. Hurug helps out again, once again, with setting up the torches. As you proceed upstairs after the initial thing, the first thing you notice, Scourge, is that you expect to have to lock the door again. But as you walk over to the door to do as such after you set to 2 p.m. again, the lock seems to magically appear in the same fashion that you fastened it the first time.
Ah, good. We don't have to keep fiddling around with. It's good.
But as you proceed to watch the door begin to crack in and then proceed to follow your compatriots upstairs, you come on up to the second floor hallway, as is before. And the visions do appear to be similar. You walk into you attempt to enter the room and find it unbudging, which is as you had made it before for the noblewoman to escape. The raiders do come bursting upstairs, and the same scene unfolds, though she does seem to have a bit more of a notion ahead of time of something being wrong, and you hear the crash, or you hear the opening of the glass or the crash of glass as she jumps out earlier. As they proceed to come in, some of them ignore that room and proceed further, going in to ransack the treasure room and free their compatriots from their cages. You hear the sound of the blacksmith engaging in combat and falling yet again, and that's about all you can really hear from this point. Do you follow along with any of the action as it proceeds, or do you simply stay here?
Yeah, following along would probably be a good idea.
We probably should, so we can solve this puzzle.
Yeah, I'm curious about also anything different in the dungeon. I assume there's going to be chains back, but
So, as you proceed back into the room that was holding the prisoners, you do notice that the same chains that you had taken appear for a short bit of time, but as later on, as the scene ends, they seem to vanish. Which, just as you hear the sound of something downstairs flying off in a random direction. So, assumedly, it's reset to 4, and the present time means that they are no longer there because that's where you took them from. At least that's the only conclusion you can seem to come to. The same sort of looting appears in the treasure room where they push through the door and loot all the chests in rapid succession, not really caring for what kind of disarray they leave behind, and missing a couple coins here and there as they do so because they're in a rush, but otherwise they seem to pilfer all sorts of great things and bring them outside as others among them proceed forward to do more fighting. It seems that they have some form of organization as to who's doing the looting and who's doing the killing, but you can't understand a single word of anything they're saying in this non-common language.
what could be a fun surprise we could put in one of these chests? Probably nothing we might not
Grenouille.
lose. Huh?
Grenouille.
It would be pretty funny.
At this point, time is reset to 4. If you want to do another cycle of the 2 p.m., just let me know. We'll skip over like all the details of getting up to that point.
Reginald, do you have anything that might pop?
Yes. I have several of my explosive devices that if you could find perhaps some rope and some wood or string or something to fix it with, I could attempt to rig up some sort of trap. Although I did also have an idea with the, I believe there was flour in the kitchen.
Oh?
So if you were to scatter flour in a room and then set it alight, it's quite explosive.
Huh. So maybe set a torch to fall at the right time. Maybe
Yes,
something
yes,
that'll
yes,
be knocked over by a door.
yes, yes. We would need to figure out how to get the flour to scatter first. I'm assuming setting it up by the door so that it rips, and then the torch falls on it, and all of the raiders get exploded. Or at least most of them do. It may also uh, destroy some of the. Well, no, the coins are made of metal, so it'll at the very least cause some weird shrapnel. But yes, that is an option.
Rug seems to take interest in this conversation, steps in for a moment, and looks at the door. And he's just like, there is one issue. How will you set it up inside if you can't get in before they start?
Yes, that is a problem. I've also been thinking of how to save the blacksmith as well, assuming that it requires everyone to survive. That is a one outlier in this situation. Um, hmm. uh,
I know not what the time elementals nor the spirits of time wish for us to do here, but it's a start, at least.
uh, Reginald kind of looks into the room, just thinks for a moment.
Oh?
What are the chandeliers being held up by? Is it like chain or rope?
It is chain. The fear of rope would be that if the flicks of the lights somehow lap up too high, that they may have a chance to set it on fire, so they use metal.
If we could somehow weaken the chains on the chandelier and enough that it would perhaps come down with a bit of tugging, and then set up a system on the inside. We could perhaps affix flour to the chandelier. It falls, the flour goes everywhere. Candles are lit, so that would provide perhaps the ignition. And then they basically open the door and everything explodes.
Well, if we need somebody to work out there, we certainly have one person who can, at least with their talons, carry it. Hrug says, looking at Zephyr.
That is true.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
I'll go bring the flour.
Yes, if you would. And Reginald kind of goes through his things. Yes. I do have this flask of acid. That should, with the correct application, weaken the chains appropriately.
That might be hard to open up and maneuver for me. I will try, though.
If it is not too much trouble for you, perhaps we can work together on this.
I'm listening.
Well, basically, I was thinking you could carry me. I gingerly apply the acid and fix everything, and good work.
Huh. Yes. Well, what are we waiting for?
Yeah, should I also lend a hand in this?
Yes. If you could take some of the rope and fix it to the door, or at least the handle, so that, well, I know that I have to figure out how to get this appropriately. Oh, we could probably make some sort of tripwire mechanism. I'm not good at trap making, though. I can certainly try.
I'm going to say that, if anything, I want you to roll me a survival check overall to see how well you assemble this. And then following that, you can do a knowledge check to see if you notice whether or not you do badly, if that's the case.
Alright.
Chase will give a bit of assistance to that, so add a +2.
Alright. The +2, that'd be a 15.
You barely manage to set up a trap that you rudimentarily seem to understand will function for the task at hand. It's nothing elaborate or fancy, it doesn't look that great, but hey, you managed to get it to work, and flare isn't necessarily the point of all this. After all, there's a big explosion to be had afterwards, so that'll come later.
Big boom.
Big boom on the Vikings.
Very well, that is taken care of. Shall we see if everything checks out?
Yes, I'll head back down. Chase, would you accompany me?
Sure thing.
And with that, Chase and Hrug head back downstairs and set the clock to 2 p.m. or 2. I'm just going to say 2. You do so, and then you proceed back upstairs.
Perhaps we should set up our little stakeout by the smithy, just in case. I don't know if the fire would affect us, but I don't really want to be that close.
Nor do I.
I'm okay with that. You just move on over. After a while, Hrug comes upstairs. You hear the same sounds of the scene unfolding downstairs, and eventually along with Hrug and Chase coming upstairs, there appear to be a group of raiders with strange helmets coming into the room, charging in, attempting to bust open their friends. That group seems relatively unharmed. It is the first to come in, and they proceed past without any issue. The next group comes over to the treasure room door and proceeds to begin knocking it down. And as they do the final click on it, they proceed to go inside and loot the gold with no issues or impediments. And then you realize that the trap you set up isn't there.
That is concerning, yeah.
And Hrug proceeds to point out that the reason for this is because you set the trap up at 4 and forgot to set the time back and make it before this whole thing happened.
Yes, of course, the time element.
And so I'm going to skip over all that. I just sort of wanted to laugh at you a little bit, but you proceed to reset up the trap at noon in the past, where it is actually useful, and then proceed to set it to 2 so that the trap actually exists when this whole entire thing occurs. And now we fast forward back to when this scene occurs in the current timeline, and the raiders come up to the door, begin to hack at it and kick it in, and as you stand behind the suits of armor near the blacksmith to watch the whole entire scene unfold, the last one kicks the door and it falls in just as it did before, but there's a small snapping noise, and the raiders, a group of about 5 of them, look above and see the chandelier drop on them while a strange powder mixed in proceeds to fly off everywhere and obscure vision. After a very short moment, you are hearing the screaming of burning men as they proceed to scream, running towards the window of the treasure room and throw themselves out into the moat. A couple of them make the wrong choice, go out the other window, and you hear a thud as they seem to land on the portcullis instead. But you see this room, now completely unpilfered, and 2 broken windows at the opposite end, with a bit of heat around you. The floor is still on fire, and the people that were in the jail room proceed to come up to the door, but since it's bars, they can just look through it and see that the other side of the room is on fire, and start to angrily and confusedly talk amongst themselves in their foreign language. But the fire eventually clears. The jailers proceed to come out. One of the raiders that was there before proceeds to come back upstairs with notable burn scars, but otherwise alive and now drenched as well, and proceeds to join them in looting this room now that they are, not burnt to death. None of the others proceed to return. And with that, the room is looted once again, and we return to the normal time, and you hear the torches fly off into oblivion.
No survivors on their end. See what happened downstairs, I suppose.
Yes. Though, before we do that, probably stop by the smithy, grab some swords, and attempt to provision the civilians appropriately.
How many swords are available in here?
There are some that were crafted, but he does seem to have a mild stock of various weapons off in the corner. It's not an excessive amount. It's more like a personal stock or ones that he's still working on, but they seem forged enough to work in the hands of amateurs who don't even know the difference between good and bad anyway. And so you procure about five various hand weapons, swords, axes, hatchets, and bring them downstairs with you, along with a few shields. I assume you reset the cycle to 2 p.m. and leave those weapons in there inside of the dining room or something around when the event begins.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Do you want me to recount that scene in difference, or would you rather me do that later with something else just to save some time?
I'd like to hear how it goes.
All right. The same usual scene, as is now the usual, comes about where the front door starts to get broken in, and everyone starts to look around and panic and then scramble. Multiple of the servants and some of the nobility do flee into the 2 halls on the side, which has always been the case, but I'm just pointing it out in particular because I feel like I failed to do so before. But a decent number of them go into the dining room, and a few of them were already in there. As they close the dining room door, they proceed to look about. You, having decided that it would be hard to see what they're doing inside the dining room from outside the dining room, very, consciously leave yourselves inside the dining room to watch this whole scene unfold. Before you, one of the servants looks about, sees the pile of weapons, grabs a hatchet and jams it inside of the door between the bars in an attempt to barricade that as well, yet further. And the rest of them proceed to grab the rest of the weapons as one of the more noble figures proceeds up front, one that did not remain before, and takes a sword from amongst the others, and with it in his hand seems to have a great deal more confidence than he did before, as he does some practice swings mid-air and prepares himself, holding what seems to be some sort of fencing stance. Eventually, the front door breaks, and they begin to break down this door. It is barricaded yet again, so they have to go through the entire rigmarole breaking it. But as they do, and charge into the room, from around the corners inside of the inside of the dining room, or just on the inside edges of the door, a couple of the servants come about, directed by the nobleman, and ambush them, chopping down 2 of them immediately. Another 7 remain and proceed to charge in, and the servants proceed to start to flee, but this appeared to be as was planned, as the nobleman takes up the finely crafted sword, or at least as well as it could be, and proceeds to, I'd make this reference as a Faram, but none of you would get it because it's a For Honor community reference. But he basically does the video game equivalent of anti-gank and fucks all of them up in very short order. They all seem to be rather crudely trained warriors, or at least the ones coming in, but this gentleman appears to be a fine swordsmaster of a sort and cuts them all down. The back windows have been opened and some people have vacated, just in happenstance that something goes very wrong. But after a short while, with a few notably deep but not fatal wounds, he is able to, in the end, finish them all off with a couple interventions from some of the servants with weapons at opportune moments. And instead of the usual scene of servants and noblemen sprawled about, the scene instead shows a large group of about 8 or so raiders lying dead on the ground, bleeding out. And the nobleman proceeds to, after kicking one of the corpses in disdain, take off the helmet and look at it and seeming to try and figure something out. And they seems to have some sort of revelatory, facial expression before you suddenly hear the sound of shaking and the torches fly off again.
Much better.
Yes, that was quite unexpected.
Yeah, very surprising, to say the least.
There was also a random explosion at some point during this fight, but you weren't here to look at it this time. You did also notice outside the doors a vague shape falling out of the window outside if you were paying close enough attention. Which would be the one raider that thought it's smart enough to jump out the window that actually leads to the moat instead of the portcullis bridge.
Well, some still made it upstairs. But all in all, this castle should still be standing wherever it is in the present.
You proceed to head on back upstairs to observe what happened upstairs, and the same sort of now, obviously snuffed out flame from before lies there, and the treasure room is still looted. But, actually, that's about it that you notice. It seems to be the same as before. The blacksmith is still dead, the jail room is still, dealt with, and all the escapees have come out, and once again the chains that you took earlier are now still gone. It is still mostly the same scene of devastation as before, as you do know that when you looked at the scene, not everyone charged the main room. People split off rather immediately with a large horde, and many of them just went upstairs straight ahead, instead of joining that main combat group that seemed to get downed in the dining area. And it did not seem that in the immediate combat or events of this whole entire thing that the saving of the people in the dining room had any effect on the rest of the building or the rest of the events.
It's frustrating. You can't know too far beyond after this. Though, if there's enough of... No, there's enough resistance downstairs. Presumably you might have been able to rally something, or maybe they still had to evacuate. Didn't they have some reinforcements outside that shot through the building?
Yep. Throughout the scene, you still hear the sound of the explosion above you to the southwest. And if you proceed up and into that hallway, you do still notice that the bathroom is devastated, the columns are broken, and all the rubble is now in the moat below. There remains the same invisible wall preventing you from entering that area or falling out of the building.
Yes, well, I don't believe that you can do much about that, considering it is a outside influence, and I don't think we're able to leave till everything is settled here.
Everyone we do save, though, assuming this isn't just an echo and actually something that affects our world, everyone that escapes could be a whole bloodline that now exists. I wonder whatever made this like this once.
I do not know the whims of the fates, and that is one of the first things you learn studying about the elementals of time. They work in ways beyond mortal or even immortal comprehension at times.
So, what else can we change?
They appeared to want to free their compatriots. If that was the main reason for all of this, then that might be important.
You suggesting maybe we free the compatriots before the raid begins. If they jump for the moat, well, I suppose they would still come up to find him either way, but if they jump early enough, maybe the raid's suddenly not so worth it. And if it is, there's still the fire in the treasure room.
I mean, I would assume that if these raiders wanted to free these people, then we don't necessarily... Assuming we are on the side of the ones living here, wouldn't want them freed either. They must be imprisoned for a reason.
Are we on any side?
That is a question. I mean, it does appear that the actions you've been taking have been to save these people, so I just assumed that was your intention.
Oh, for sure. I would like to. A lot of these people, as far as I can tell, seem innocent, maybe even not combatants normally. I am glad we're saving them. I just bear no overall ill will towards the enemy either. If we can find a solution that lets us go free, I don't particularly care whose goal we're furthering just yet.
Hmm.
If and when I know more, that may change, but for now, we are just a stranded third party as far as I'm aware.
True. I'm going to go back into the noblewoman's quarter. Would somebody assist me in returning time to noon, so that I may do so?
Yes, of course.
And all things considered, Herug says he wants to go investigate the files and documents that were left in the room of the noblewoman that didn't really get inspected much before, and proceeds to leave the group for the time being to do his own bit of extra research in hopes of assisting all of you. But in the meanwhile, he does then proceed to not really mind if you guys reset it to the current present. So, are you what is your next plan of action here?
Well, fear that the remaining person that we would need to assist is the blacksmith. Though doing so, how to do so is rather complicated.
Well, as the expression goes, we have all the time in the world. Tell us your plan.
Well, one idea I had was somehow making it so that, sort of with the similar thing with the noblewoman room, we could somehow bar passage from the side, the anvil perhaps, but again, the whole problem of it being a closed room once you do so is unfortunate. If only Marasmus was here, then could potentially have him move something and then squish under the door.
Yes, if only I was also adept at that squishing through the door thing. Alas.
What about just some of the... No, I'm not sure.
Would you... Let me know if you want hints and if you're absolutely stumped, because I'm willing to give you small, like, pokes in the right direction, but I'd rather see if you guys can come up with a solution yourselves. What I will say as the hint right now is there are 3 more things that need to be accomplished. But this is only known out of character.
This idea, well, to be frank, it sounds kind of dumb, but could we check the jail if if the prisoners have been stripped of their own armor? Could we leave some of their armor handy to the blacksmith? Do you think if he hears a raid occurring, he might get the idea then to don it and pretend to be one of them?
Yes, or he would have something of a fighting chance. There is also a bit of fiddling that I would like to do, though I unfortunately do not have the appropriate tools, but I will figure something out. Specifically, part of the raid is, of course, them freeing them compatriots, so I'm going to try to mess up the locks a bit, so that is that they're incapable of doing so.
You think if they're that persistent, you think it would take long enough that they might abandon them, or something could happen to save these people?
Yes, something like that, perhaps. Perhaps if they were waylaid long enough, the noble that we gave the sword to come up and slay the rest of them. I honestly don't know. But yes, disrupting these canon events seems to be the thing to do.
Let's try it. How would you fiddle with the locks?
Well, assuming that there are keys and such in the room, so I suppose simply haphazardly taking the keys and jamming them in there, I don't know, snapping them or something. Just any way to disable the device.
Hide them in the suits of armor.
Yeah. Perhaps. Hiding the keys would certainly less work for me, I suppose. So let's try that.
Alright, grab the keys. I'll lift you to each of the helmets.
There you go about grabbing the keys during the whole entire thing and hiding them within the suits of armor, as you said. Yep. Rest of the scene plays out as previously described, but as they break into this room and attempt to free the compatriots, they don't find a set of keys available, and so instead of attempting to do that the easy way, they proceed to start trying to break the bars open and break the cages away that way. Some of them proceed to cause some minor metal shrapnel to hit the prisoners, and one of the prisoners gets enraged at them for taking so damn long and starts to try and grab at them through the bars to try and get something they can use to pick lock them damn selves, as they say, in common, actually. However, during all of this, as you sort of alluded to, some help does actually come. Some of the servants from below and the gentleman with the apparent skills in fencing come charging upstairs. At this point, the blacksmith has already been slain, sadly, but they charge into this room, hearing that there is still continuous activity and more of that strange foreign tongue being spoken, and proceed to come in and lop down the remainder of these raiders, as they are, as they come in and attempt to break out. And this room does not have any windows for them to escape through, so they lie dead on the floor. One of the servants takes a grievous wound, but at least the blood is staunched from it, and it looks like it's not going to be terminal.
What do these prisoners look like? Assuming they don't have like their armor and everything on.
They all appear to be very fair-skinned humans. Rather very pale. Not like vampire pale, but definitely from the north in some capacity, you would assume, or at least from colder regions where you would get less sun.
Do they all seem to be, I imagine it might not be so easy to tell, do they all seem like they were probably warriors of some sort?
They are all in sort of like varying states of, at this point, malnutrition, but some of them seem to be newer and seem to be in pretty damn good shape physically, so, or at least were before they started to get, partially starved out in these cages. So you are assuming that that is a very high possibility.
Alright.
I have an idea that may not work with the blacksmith, but following your logic of alerting him to the raid, what if we were to, say, at the right time, just break a window? Theoretically, he would go over to investigate why, see that there are men streaming in, and do something about it.
Worth a try.
What are you going to go about doing?
Just So my
like,
idea
time
was
window smash.
yeah, smash a window, but like time it so that it smashes around the time that the raid begins, so that the blacksmith sees that the raid is starting.
I'm gonna attempt to give him like time to prepare or something.
Yeah.
Alright, you attempt as such. I just need to double check one thing real quick.
I'll be right back. I have to go to the bathroom real quick.
Alright. I just wanted to check one thing real quick I had on that map. I could have just gone over myself instead of activating for everyone, but I don't think about things. Yeah, so in the past, the door was not locked to the blacksmiths, so you're able to come in just fine. Around the beginning of the entire raid, You find the blacksmith hard at work within his smithy, seeming to hammer some rough metal into shape. Seems like he's just starting up a new project of some sort. How do you break the window?
Let's see.
What about with a piece of his equipment and leave that on the windowsill, just for extra interest?
Yeah, just like take one of his hammers and just like bash the window with it.
Alrighty. So, you attempt to pick up one of his hammers and walk over to the window to bash the window, and as you swing the hammer to hit the window, it bounces off and hits you square in the forehead, giving you a bit of a bruise, but no actual damage. However, he does seem to turn around and look about, and notice that his hammer is missing now, and scratches at his head, but is still subsequently taken by surprise by the raiders. He gets a bit confused in the midst of all the shouting and whatnot below as well, so he doesn't really pay enough attention. What you seem to notice is that you can move objects, but you can't break them.
If we could find something like maybe a piece of that charcoal, could you draw? Or Reginald, you could write, yes?
Yes, I am quite fluent in writing things. Yeah, perhaps we could leave him a note somehow.
Yes, maybe even keep it with the window idea. Maybe even something on, I don't know, write something down on an object and place it there. Get his attention.
What would the message of this note be?
Maybe something right to the point. A note by the window that says jump.
Yeah. So my idea was to write down raiders, see if that gets his attention.
And where do you procure all the writing materials from? Do you already have, like, parchment on you?
Let's see, what does my kit have? So I sort of have parchment. I have my formula book, which I could probably just like rip a page out of. And I do have ink and an ink pen.
Alright, so you have means to write something down.
Yep.
So what is the full message written?
Reginald would probably write something like, "Beware of raiders." And then he'd do like the little dash, and then Reginald.
The scene plays out mostly as normal, but at the very beginning of the scene, you notice this blacksmith look about, and how did you attach the paper, and where did you put it? Like, I assume you have some sort of adhesive alchemical region, so I'm not even going to bug you too much about that. Or can make something. However, the question is where you put it and when.
So, since we can move things, I have a dumb idea. Basically, as things start up, Reginald just like swaps his hammer out with the note.
All right, yeah. He begins his work and pulls out from the furnace, hot and ready, very, very well warmed piece of metal to begin hammering it into shape. And as he subconsciously puts his hand where he knows his hammer should be, he instead finds nothing. Seems confused for a moment and looks down and sees a paper. He picks it up, and as he does and seems to read over the very minimal amount of text, you hear him whisper, "Reginald, who's Reginald?" And then the door in front of the building shatters open, and he looks around in surprise and runs to the window. And he sees all of the raiders running by coming into the building. There are tons of them, and he just looks at them aghast, and with a small bit of hesitation, he then proceeds to turn back and grabs some wood from his fire and takes it out and throws it through the window onto the portcullis outside, which, if you manage to look past him and see, does, after a short moment, set the front portcullis on fire. He then proceeds to run over to his door and charge out of the room and head to the left. He proceeds into the hallway, but just as he does, the massive explosion that takes out the room jars him aside and knocks him to the ground as he looks to see the hole that was once the bathroom. And with a little bit of panic in his eyes, he turns and looks at the other room at the further end of the hallway. The one up here on your left, and proceeds over to there, fumbles about at his hip for a key, and unlocks it before briefly running inside and relocking it. And the rest of the scene seems to play out. They proceed to charge up to the room and enter the blacksmithy, but he is not there. The door is open. They are screaming angrily about something. One of them uses the common word fire, but that's about the extent of what you can understand. He does not emerge from the storage room at all, to your knowledge, before the torches are flown about.
Ah, yes, good.
Excellent.
And now I believe the only thing left to do would be should we do something with the something else with the treasure room? Perhaps. I would say fiddling with the locks or something that they cannot get into the chest, but then they could also just bash it open.
What if we block the windows to the moat so that those that try to jump out that way succumb?
That
Might have been
could
pleasant
work.
death, but they might be long dead anyway.
I mean, if you want to, you can bar up the windows inside of the treasure room, but the question is getting inside of it early enough to do it before it matters. Ladies and gentlemen, our party is having a rough time thinking of a solution to this.
Having a hard time doing a big think. It's time to call in the viewers themselves. Who wants to be a millionaire?
Hey, Skrulk, how would you get all the gold and such in the room if you were a raider? Break open the door? Okay, cool. Now imagine the door can't be broken open. How do you get inside? Here's a hint. You have time shenanigans. And for those who may be watching this later, Lord Skrulk is the only person talking in the chat, just for context. May not be here. Oh well, keep thinking about it.
Several would suggest let's go up to where exactly the blacksmith went and try to get some more ideas from there.
You mean the storage room we went into?
Yeah. Anything of interest, or?
No, not really anything of interest. It's just general storage for basic accoutrements of the entire place. Extra food storage, general supplies, and whatnot. Like, you could find some things in specific ways. If you were looking for something specific and you needed certain things to do it, I might be able to point you in the right direction. But if you're just looking in general to see if there's anything of interest, not really.
No ideas there. Let's go back to the idea with the chests. What were you thinking we could do with those, Reginald?
Yes, perhaps simply locking them would give them enough trouble that they may give up, or it may sort of pan out similarly to the jail room where the noble comes up, fighting ensues. Chase,
We?
do you know how to turn into thieves' tools?
You mean like this? She morphs into like a thief's tool?
You're able to morph part of yourself into like one bit of the kit, but it's a very ineffective tool. Considering you're attempting to make like a lockpick, but it's technically more flesh, for example. Basically, I'm ruling that you can't effectively utilize the entirety of a kit of tools for like lockpicking or thievery as your mimic form. You may be able to get one that works okay. Like, you can still shapeshift and you can get it in the right form, but it's still then like subject to the fact that you're not necessarily very good at lockpicking and you would have to be the one doing it.
Yeah, I need some directions in order to figure out how to yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yes, that is simple enough. I do know a bit of lock picking and whatnot. certainly aid in that situation.
My one hint is that there is a much easier solution that you are overlooking.
All right. What have we? Let's review. What have we?
So booby trapped the chest room, strengthened the locks in the prison, barred the front door, left weapons for the dining room crew, and had the note to warn the blacksmith. And of course, the previous session, barring the room of the lady.
Yeah. What else is it that we have overlooked?
Perhaps this will definitely be a sort of concerted effort. But what if we simply made it so that they cannot get into the room? Perhaps by blocking the door with the chest?
Oh. That's a possibility.
I'm certain that between, let's see, between yourself and Chase, moving the chests shouldn't be too hard.
Yeah, if I could stay, if I could hover enough, I could gradually shove my way into one of them.
So what's the consensus here?
Try to block up the treasure room.
Yeah. Seems like a decent
How do you go
plan.
about it?
Basically, we would have like Chase and Zephyr wait until like me and Harug reset things, and then get to work just like shoving the treasure chests in front of the door.
Where do they
Yeah,
wait? Where do they wait?
Inside the treasure room?
Ooh.
Right.
Would so that chandelier's going to be pretty weak.
Yeah, yes. Well, that is the simple effects. We just simply take off the flower.
Yeah.
That way you all don't explode.
Yeah, it'll be a good precaution. Other than that, let me test the weight of these chests. Chase, I think you may have to do more of the pushing, but if I get hovering and just give a good few rushes into both feet, I could probably get one moving.
Oh, no worries, my friend. We are going to get this done.
So you,
Well,
you're waiting inside of the room now, and then they proceed back downstairs and readjust time?
Pretty much. Think so.
yep.
Yep, so it swaps back to 2, and you are both inside of the treasure room. As as this flow of time begins, you immediately realize that instead of the broken doored room of basically empty chests that you're used to seeing inside of here, the door is now properly sealed, and the chests are all closed, some of which are bulging slightly beyond capacity, with gold, gems, and other things. And I'm assuming you... what was it again? What were you trying to do? Just move one of the chests in front of the door?
Yeah, just block up the door.
Relatively simple for you to do, especially with Chase's strength. You push one of the heavier chests in front of the door, a little bit of shoving and grunting, and after a short moment you feel and hear the breaking at the door from earlier that you're used to at this point. But the breaking of the door seems to have a lot more pushback now that there's a chest in the way. You do still see splintering wood and movement as the door proceeds further and further open, but then after a short bit of knocking it back and forth, it jiggles far enough that you hear the succinct snap and crack, followed by the blazing screams of these individuals as they run about the building trying to find some way to snuff out the flames. Reginald, I'm assuming you're watching from outside?
Yeah.
From outside, you see one of the gentlemen run into the blacksmiths. The same scene of him escaping earlier has happened, and he sees the basin of quenching water and begins to try and run towards it. But as he does, he's only able to get part of himself in before he just, keels over because he's been getting burned long enough that's causing significant damage to his throat and breathing. And you see him lying next to the quenching pit, one arm inside of the water, but the rest of him still ablaze.
At seeing this, Reginald sort of chuckles to himself. Not close enough.
Now you find yourself, as the torches downstairs, the very now familiar sound of them getting shot off in random directions, you find yourselves sitting in the treasure room, unpilfered, with the chest in front of the door.
Well, seems to have worked somewhat. Oh wait, how are you two supposed to? Well, Do you think that the chest will move back? Well, it set up in the past, so I believe you two should be able to leave. And not...
You attempt to
mess
push
up
this
anything.
chest aside and attempt to open the door. It is unlocked from the inside. So you simply open the door and step outside.
Oh, good. That would have been unpleasant.
Well then, I believe that is all of the things that we've seen. Should we try to leave?
We could, but there's one more thing I would want to check. Let's stop back at the one woman's room.
Sure.
You do proceed to the noblewoman's room. It is vacated of anything, no corpses left about.
What about the plans on the table? Unless the woman took them with her?
Her rug is actually in the room already, reading through them, as what he was going to do earlier. He seems to be organizing them in some capacity in the present time.
Well, what have you learned?
They've been talking of raids from the north that have been happening on and off. Something about them holding an important political prisoner. The jewels that were to be transferred. It seems to be lining up that there's good reason for this raid, at least from their perspective. And very reasonable belief that the Brosh society of this time frame would not appreciate any of this being lost.
So these jewels to be transferred. So the north, those from the north were already raiding those from Brosh at this point? And they must have captured this back from them?
There were multiple reports, yes, in this of attacks from these northerners. The Barbers, as they're known to the Brosh. They seem to be... Let's see what it says here. Yes, this was part of the reason why they retreated from their initial expedition into Morgram. They had to deal with wars back in the homeland, and the Barbers were a significant threat.
Interesting. Could it be that if they win this battle, they would be in Morgram even sooner? I don't know how important this
Do not know how well that would alter the timeline, honestly. I mean, it's the butterfly effect, as you may... Well, no, I don't think you would have heard of it.
Butterfly effect?
Think nothing of it, dear. It is simply that things happen in order based on previous events, but we can't really full well know how those events will transpire and what they will lead to.
Oh, I think I know what you mean. You mean the swivel chair effect.
Excuse me?
When a swivel chair swivels around too much, the velocities sonar signals causes many more chaotic incidences in some other place.
I see. Well, I've never heard it put that way. That is technically a possibility, yes. So yes, your swivel chair effect is about the equivalent of what I was talking about. We'll call it that. And this is on a much grander scale. If the war against the Barbers is veered even mildly in the preference of Brosh, the war could end much quicker, or something bad could happen later on that swings it back the opposite way. We don't really have a necessary way of knowing how it will go, but suffice to say, at least the people here will be in better condition, and this effort on this political prisoner of theirs and rescuing him from the looks of it will not transpire as they sought it to. Maybe it was an important leader figure or religious figure or something. I know not the better, and they don't seem to know either from these files that I've read through. Could have a number of implications. So, too, depending on the location of this place, them capturing this location could be some form of foothold that would inevitably doom part of the coast of Brosh. I do recall in the history, at least before we came here that I know of, there were numerous Barber raids on the coastlines that resulted in rampant destruction, and in some places they had too much of a foothold for Brosh's like. Took them very long times to weed them out, so to say. Brosh did eventually win the war, but still.
Well, it does not seem to me that the Barbers were after any sort of this paperwork. Though I am slightly concerned with how aggressive is Brosh. If they do end up in Morgram, that may be something that we have to deal with.
I would not be able to offer much insight into that. I do know that whatever relations you have made with them, from the little I've sort of assumed over time and looking about, may not transpire the same way, and your relationships may not remain the same.
So far, we've had our mix. I mean, in truth, we've even had more. We've even fought their knife-eared rivals more often than them. Still, there are those in their civilization that have not been friendly to us either. So, if this does have an impact, I'm not sure if we'll find friendlier Brosh, angrier Brosh, much the same Brosh.
Your guess is as good as mine. What I do recommend is that you keep on thinking the way you have been, because the one thing I can for sure say is that if the time elementals did not want you messing with this time stream for their own purposes of balance or whatever have you, we wouldn't be here, and we wouldn't have this capacity for change that we seem to, what with the sundials and the actions that you've had having the results they've done. They are in much more control than you may think here. They do watch.
Yes, well, to that end, unless we missed something, I do believe we should be able to leave. So if you wish to accompany us in figuring that out.
Appears that all the notable people have been saved. At least to my knowledge. All right. Well, shall we attempt the front door?
Yes, of course.
Heading down to the front door, and the.
Why would we want to tempt the front door?
Well, I believe the bigger question is, what can you tempt a door with?
Chase is basically thinking through, trying to figure out what would tempt a door.
If I were a door, what would I want?
I have not signed up for this kind of philosophical discussion. But yeah, you proceed downstairs to the front door and attempt to open it, I gather?
Sure.
No dice. The door remains shut, and attempts to move the doorknob are resulting in like a physical repulsion, like a force pushing you back. There must be something we missed, perhaps?
Looks like it.
Yes, seems to be some canon event that we have not yet fiddled around with.
I will let you know that what you just said is a pun directly related to what you may need to do.
Oh no.
Cannon. Like the one Erasmus and Chase tried?
Yes, yes, there is the whole problem with the assault from the outside. Okay, so assuming that the treasure room resets to what we set it up as in the past. Do any of you know how to operate a cannon?
I vaguely remember the Morasmus being able to.
Yes, well, I believe if some of us were to man one of the cannons at the beginning of the assault, and sort of find where they shoot from, instead shoot them first, sort of like a gunslinger that I heard about in this old story. Then perhaps we can fix that whole debacle.
So, who is doing what?
Well, I have a flint and steel, I believe.
I
So I can,
do believe you do, yeah.
so I can definitely, like, set off the cannon, but I'd probably, like, Chase's help moving it, since cannons are heavy.
Yeah, definitely.
Zephyr's gonna dive in front of the last minute to test if deflect projectiles works on cannonballs.
You
Not actually, no.
motherfucker. Alright, you deflect the cannon. It proceeds to fall on the floor and does AoE damage still.
Well, deflect arrows did work.
You take additional damage from being in such close proximity.
Evasion.
Fuck you. You already did your reaction.
Shit.
Anywho. So you proceed upstairs and go to one of the battlements that Chase and Marasmus had been earlier when they attempted to use the cannonball, and it fired off and took a chunk out of Marasmus. And as you proceed up there, in the current time, you find the corpse of an individual lying down, riddled with arrows, in the corner of the battlement that you did not recall before.
Ah. Here's no problem. Cool. How do we keep this person from dying? Do they have armor on them at all?
This one, contrary to what the token looks like, is armored as a guard broche with broche's colors and other such things. But you do notice that many of the arrows seem to be fired in a volley that went through very quick and very unexpected and pierced multiple joint locations. It appears that, well, you don't know, but they got taken by surprise somehow.
Well,
I will say one thing: you've never played the scene while being here, so you could just, try and see what happens.
Yeah, I was
That'd be a good first step.
Yep. You have one of you head downstairs and assist Harug in resetting to 2 p.m. And the whole entire timeline proceeds. The rest of you remain upstairs. The last one proceeds along with Harug to charge upstairs to try and reach here in time before anything happens. Before you can even reach up top, you notice, those of you who are already up here in the battlement, that the guard was sleeping, and the sky outside is night. It's the first time you've noticed the sky properly from this whole time, since it's really hard to see upwards when you're inside of the building, but it is nighttime. The guard just seems to be sleeping. And as this proceeds, and some of the noise is about to start, just before looking down, you see them about to start ramming through the front gate. A series of arrows flies off in volley and pierces into the neck of the sleeping soldier, who proceeds to try and stand up and grasp at the arrow in his neck before numerous others pierce him, and he goes down and bleeds out. Repeating the same scene on the other side, it appears to be just about the same. They were asleep, they got taken by surprise, and died. Neither of the battlements in the back appear to be in any position to allow you to even see the front scene, and you do notice during the entire combat that the trebuchet, or rather catapult, not trebuchet, that was used earlier is off in the distance. It approaches, and around the time that you'd expect to, launches a shot into what was the bathroom.
So maybe following what we do with the blacksmith, maybe all we would need to do is have someone up here able to do something loud enough to get all the sentries' attention at the right time.
Yes.
So we need someone, maybe someone downstairs, someone in the treasure room to move the chest, and someone up here to wake them up. Would the chest stay fixed in place?
The chest stays fixed in place.
Oh, excellent. So we
The
have...
the previous actions remain. That's one thing you've
Alright.
noticed thus far.
All right. What can we do to wake them then?
Well, we don't necessarily have anything up here to rig up any sort of device to, like, wake them up. But perhaps simply... if we were to, say, move one of the cannonballs onto something so that it simply just rolls off and, the sound would likely wake up the guard. That could probably work. But the problem is that there are 2 guards. So we would most likely have to do that in tandem. Or at least rig both of them up in such a way that they go off at the same time.
I mean, yeah, you can attempt to do as such. It's pretty straightforward.
That'd be our best bet.
All right. Are the guards just like asleep on a chair or something?
In different positions. Like, one of them is in the corner just sleeping against the wall. The other one just seems to have fallen asleep by the cannon sitting on a stool. The one in front of you is the one on the stool. The other one, other bowman, is the gentleman who fell asleep in the corner.
I see an easy solution. Yeah. And Reginald takes out his scimitar and just starts sawing away at one of the legs of the stool.
Chase is looking at Reginald in horror.
Yeah, it basically when time resets, the guy's just gonna fall over.
Just like, I'm sorry, dear, but I must amputate. But yeah, for the gentleman on the stool, it goes about correctly as you would expect. The stool falls over very shortly after the beginning of the event. He grudgingly wakes up, grunts a little bit, and looks uninspired until he peers over the horizon and sees like a wisp of light, and then in his curiosity he slowly approaches the bowman edge and very narrowly avoids an arrow whizzing by his head as the rest of them proceed to land where he once was. He gulps a little bit and then proceeds to grab a horn that was hidden beneath the cannon and below it hard. Sadly, upon looking at the other side, the other battlement, the guard is already dead because the arrows were all launched at the same time. So he was not awakened by the horn and subsequently saved. He was still killed.
Okay. One taken care of.
Guess we have to do we have to do that with the other one then?
Well, I do believe he was on a stool.
Could you put something above him that might drip on his head?
Yes, if there was a... And Rexville brings out one of the cups that he took. Fill this with water, rig it to dump onto the man, and that way they both wake up at the same time.
With a bit of effort, you're able to get something rigged up that seems to fall at the right time. It takes a couple of attempts to get it to time right, but you are able to manage it. The one battlement guard is groggy from falling on his ass. The other one is annoyed at suddenly being drenched, and then proceeds to stand up, walk about, almost get shot by the arrows, and fucking duck and cover before the following series of them lands into the corner of the wall. Hears the horn blare, and then charges up to the cannon to light it on fire. Off in the distance, you see the catapult being pulled up and brought into position and armed and ready, preparing to do its shot, but the opposing force does not appear to know that the very same guards that they assumed dead are now aiming cannons at the catapult, which fire in quick succession, one after the other, and shrapnel the entire catapult, along with murdering the the small crew that accompany it, along with some of the other soldiers nearby. This, followed shortly later by the rest of the scene and the amount of death that occurs, leads to you seeing the opposing force turn tail and run back towards the coast.
I think we won. Well, Rosh won.
Huh. Well, only one way to find out.
Yes.
Hey, I hear the narration of the documentary about this somewhere way off in the distance.
And around this moment, Harug comes out and says, I do believe we have solved everything. And then all of you suddenly have an ear-piercing screech inside of your minds.
Oh shit.
Go ahead and make a fortitude save for me.
Fortitude. Hey, not bad.
All right. You all managed to hold away the feeling for a good bit of time. Harug appears to drop first to the ground, unconscious, before you. And after a minute or so of attempting to aid him while also attempting to push back this noise in your head, Fester, you fall on the ground, unconscious, followed by Zephyr and Chase, as all fades to black.
Oh boy.
And next session, you will wake up.
Yay.
Yeah! Change the world. My final message. Goodbye.
Goodbye. And that is true as well, because this is the end of our session for today. I want to make sure everyone's here for the next session, so it is rather important that I end off at this point. Hopefully I'll have everyone for next time, but for now, if you guys want to recount anything for them, feel free. Till then, I am going to say goodbye to you in the chat, goodbye to my compatriots in the voice call with me for the session, and I'll see you in... We're actually going to have to skip over this next session's time, because I do want everyone here, and we've already confirmed that Runt isn't going to be able to come on the 16th at all. So next session should be on the 30th in a full month, in a full 4 weeks' time. So we've already been a bit sporadic, and I apologize for that, but I do really want everyone here for the next session, if at all possible, so I am willing to wait a little bit longer for the necessity of the narrative.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, that works.
But yeah, you found that out the whole time. The one thing that I will say you never did, that you could have done, very easily, is loot the room yourself.
Yeah,
Oh.
but I mean, we're adventurers. We never do the easy option.
We need to do it super complicated because it's a canon event.
Yeah, a canon event. I really loved that you gave me that very easy segue into a hint by accident. But yeah, with that, I will see you all later. Thank you very much, everyone, for dropping by. Peace.